Some men play football. Others go to war. This is the story of a warrior who couldn't tell the difference, and whose inner fire built a legend and then burned it all to the ground. If you love stories that go beyond the pitch, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell, because you won't want to miss what we have in store. The air in the Highbury tunnel was a foul, familiar brew. A toxic cocktail of anticipation and pure animosity that you could almost taste. It was February 1st, 2005. Manchester United were in town to face Arsenal in a fixture that had become more than a match. It was the defining blood feud of the Premier League era. But the real battle, the one that everyone was waiting for, had already started before a single ball was kicked. Patrick Vieira, the colossal, impossibly elegant captain of Arsenal, was singling out Gary Neville, trying to intimidate him. Suddenly a figure shot into the television frame, a blur of red jabbing a finger, his eyes burning with a cold, terrifying fire. "I'll see you out there." The voice was a menacing rasp, a Cork accent that sliced right through the thick tension like a razor. It was Roy Keane. Of course it was Roy Keane. On the surface, he was defending his teammate. But this was about so much more. This was him laying down a marker. This was his turf, his arena. This was a war, and he was its most willing, its most fearsome general. The referee, a flustered Graham Poll, had to physically intervene, pleading, "Roy, you'll have to calm down." But you can't calm a hurricane. You can't calm a volcano. And you could never ever calm Roy Keane. That fire wasn't something to be extinguished. It was the very core of the man. To understand Roy Keane, you have to understand that fire. It wasn't born on a football pitch. It was forged in the tough working-class streets of Mayfield, Cork, in the Republic of Ireland. Born in 1971, Keane was one of 5 kids in a family that, like so many in the area, lived and breathed sport. But here's the thing you might not know. His first true love wasn't even football. It was boxing. In the squared circle under the dim lights of the local gym, he learned the brutal, beautiful science of combat. He learned discipline. He learned courage. He learned how to take a punch square on the jaw, and more importantly, how to give one back, even harder. He was a promising amateur boxer, winning every single one of his novice bouts. The footwork, the aggression, that sheer stubborn refusal to ever be beaten. These weren't just boxing lessons. They were life lessons he would carry with him forever. Football, though, was always there, a constant presence. He played for his local club Rockmount, but from the very beginning he was fighting a battle against perception. He was too small, they said. Too slight. Not built for the English game. Dozens of letters went out from the club, seeking trials with English giants. Dozens of polite, dismissive rejection letters came flooding back. Imagine being a boy with an ocean of ambition inside you, being told no again and again and again. Each one of those rejections was another log on that internal fire. It nurtured a deep-seated resentment of the footballing establishment, a burning conviction that he was an outsider who would have to scratch and claw for every single opportunity. This profound sense of being underestimated became the rocket fuel for his entire career. He developed an "I'll show you" attitude that was so intense it bordered on pathological. His big break didn't come from a glamorous academy scouted by a top-tier club. It came with the semi-professional side Cove Ramblers in the gritty League of Ireland. Here, playing against grown men for peanuts, he didn't just survive, he hardened. He was a teenager doing a man's job, absorbing the knocks, learning the trade, and he excelled. Then one fateful day, during a Youth Cup match, his entire life changed. Noel McCabe, a scout for Nottingham Forest, was in the stands. He hadn't even come to see Keane. But he found he couldn't take his eyes off this dynamic, ferocious midfielder who played with a tactical maturity and a raw hunger that completely defied his age. McCabe went back to his club, his words full of passion, convincing them to give this unknown kid from Cork a trial. Keane arrived in Nottingham, a city still living in the enormous shadow of one of football's most brilliant, complex, and eccentric managers, the one and only Brian Clough. Keane knew deep in his gut this was it. This was his last chance. He played every second of that trial with a controlled fury, a desperate, palpable hunger. Clough, a man who could spot a player's soul a mile away, saw it instantly. He saw the raw talent, sure, but more than that, he saw the heart of a fighter. Nottingham Forest signed him for a fee of $47,000 in 1990. Life under Brian Clough was an education unlike any other. Clough was a genius, a maverick, a dictator, and a strange sort of father figure all rolled into one charismatic, terrifying package. He ruled his dressing room with a unique blend of fierce, razor-sharp wit and psychological games. He once famously punched a young Keane clean in the dressing room after an underhit back pass led to a goal in an FA Cup tie. Keane, lying on the floor, momentarily dazed, had a simple defining thought. I suppose he's right. He respected Clough with every fiber of his being because Clough demanded the absolute highest standards, something that resonated with Keane's own ferocious internal code. Don't argue with me, young man, Clough would often say, a glint in his eye. I'm an expert. Under Clough's strange and volatile tutelage, Keane didn't just improve. He blossomed from a raw Irish prospect into one of the most complete dominant midfielders in the entire country. He was the engine room, the driving force of that Forest team, a box-to-box dynamo who could tackle like a demon, pass like a master, and score crucial goals. But the magic at the City ground was beginning to fade. In 1993, the unthinkable happened. Forest were relegated from the newly formed Premier League, and the legendary Clough, his health failing, retired. A clause in Keane's contract was triggered, allowing him to leave in the event of relegation. Just like that, he was the most sought-after player in all of England. Kenny Dalglish, manager of the cash-rich, ambitious Blackburn Rovers, moved like lightning. A deal was agreed. A contract was drawn up, ready to be signed. But in a twist of fate, the Blackburn office had closed for the weekend. We'll sort it all out on Monday. Dalglish told Keane, confident the deal was done. It's a massive turning point for a young player. A verbal agreement with one powerhouse club, but then the phone rings. What would you do in that situation? Do you honor the handshake deal, or do you listen to the other offer? Let me know your honest answer in the comments below. That weekend, Keane's phone did ring. The voice on the other end was gravelly Scottish and incredibly urgent. It was Sir Alex Ferguson. Are you coming to Manchester United or not? He demanded no time for pleasantries. Ferguson had caught wind of the Blackburn deal, and he was not about to let the best young midfielder in the country slip through his fingers. He invited Keane to his house, sat him down, and charmed him with his vision, his passion, his relentless desire to win. By Monday morning, Roy Keane was a Manchester United player. He had brutally snubbed Blackburn, leaving Dalglish absolutely incandescent with rage, and signed for a British record fee of £3,075 million. It was a ruthless, cold-blooded decision. But for Keane, the logic was simple. He wanted to win, and Manchester United was the place to do it. He arrived at a club that was already overflowing with winners and colossal personalities. Paul Ince, the self-proclaimed governor, patrolled the midfield like he owned it. Brian Robson was the club's aging but still iconic Captain Marvel. In goal stood Peter Schmeichel, a terrifying, screaming Viking of a man. And then there was Eric Cantona, the enigmatic French king who walked on water at Old Trafford. Keane wasn't the least bit intimidated. He wasn't there to make friends or kiss rings. He was there to compete. He immediately set about proving he didn't just belong, he was there to take over. And in his very first season, United with Keane in the engine room, won the Premier League and FA Cup double. When Cantona stunned the football world with his abrupt retirement in 1997, Ferguson needed a new captain. He needed a new leader to embody the indomitable spirit of his team. For him, the choice was obvious. It had to be Roy Keane. He was given the armband, and he wore it like a badge of war. He wasn't a captain who would put a consoling arm around a struggling teammate. He was a captain who would demand more, who would sear a hole through you with his stare if you dared to give the ball away. His approval wasn't sought through quiet words of encouragement, but earned through your blood, sweat, and tears on the pitch. His personal standard was absolute perfection, and he expected every single person wearing that red shirt to meet it. This was the era of Manchester United's greatest dominance, and Keane was its snarling, relentless beating heart. The rivalry with Arsène Wenger's sophisticated Arsenal side came to define the entire age. It was a spectacular clash of styles, of philosophies, of footballing ideals, and it was embodied perfectly by the two captains, Keane and Patrick Vieira. Vieira was tall, graceful, technical, and powerful. Keane was compact, relentless, and brutally ferocious. Their on-field battles were the stuff of legend, a weekly spectacle of sheer will and world-class skill. They fought for every single inch of the pitch, their ferocious personal duel a perfect microcosm of the war being waged between their two great clubs. But no single performance, no single moment could ever encapsulate Keane's greatness better than the Champions League semi-final second leg against Juventus in Turin in 1999. United were chasing an unprecedented, seemingly impossible treble of Premier League, FA Cup, and Champions League. But in the hostile cauldron of the Stadio delle Alpi, the dream was turning into a nightmare. They were 2-0 down inside, just 11 minutes, staring down the barrel of a Juventus side featuring Zinedine Zidane, Edgar Davids, and Didier Deschamps. The situation didn't just look bad, it looked hopeless. Then Roy Keane took over. He dragged his team back into the tie, rising like a salmon to head in a crucial away goal to make it 2-1. But a short while later, he lunged into a desperate tackle on Zidane and received a yellow card. He knew instantly, with sickening certainty, what it meant if United somehow reached the final. He would be suspended. For almost any other player, it would have been a moment of crushing personal devastation that would have overshadowed the rest of the game. For Keane, it was a strange form of liberation. With nothing left to lose personally, he played with a furious, selfless, glorious abandon. He was everywhere. He tackled, he passed, he drove his team forward with every ounce of his being, refusing to let that dream die. He single-handedly seized control of the midfield from the legendary duo of Zidane and Davids. United, inspired by their captain's Herculean, almost superhuman effort, roared back to win 3-2 and book their place in the final. After the match, Sir Alex Ferguson was simply in awe. "It was the most emphatic display of selflessness I have seen on a football field," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Pounding every blade of grass, competing as if he would rather die of exhaustion than lose, he inspired all of us to victory. Keane would have to watch from the sidelines in a suit in Barcelona as his teammates completed the historic treble in the most dramatic fashion imaginable. But every single person in that stadium and everyone watching around the world knew they would never have even been there without him. What an incredible story of sacrifice. It's players like Keane, moments like that night in Turin, that make us fall in love with this game. We tell these kinds of legendary stories every week here on Legends of Football League, so if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button to make sure you never miss out on the tales that define the beautiful game. But the very same fire that made him a legendary winner also made him a deeply, deeply controversial figure. There was a darkness to his intensity, a line he was willing to cross that others would never even approach. This was never more apparent or more shocking than in his long-running feud with the Norwegian player Alf-Inge Haaland. Back in 1997, Keane had suffered a horrific cruciate ligament injury while trying to tackle Haaland, who was then playing for Leeds. As Keane lay in agony on the ground, his season over Haaland stood over him, accusing him of faking it. Keane never forgot. He never forgave. That insult festered inside him like a poison for 4 long years. In April 2001, Haaland was now playing for Manchester City in the Derby. Keane saw his moment for revenge. In a now infamous incident, he launched himself at Haaland, planting his studs high on the Norwegian's right knee. In a horrific, calculated, premeditated assault. It was an act of pure, cold vengeance. As Haaland writhed on the turf, Keane leaned down and snarled, "Don't you ever stand over me again sneering about fake injuries." In his autobiography, he would later admit with chilling honesty, "I'd waited long enough. I fucking hit him hard. I had no regrets." It was a terrifying insight into the mind of a man who operated by his own brutal, unforgiving code of justice. His capacity for all-out conflict was not reserved solely for opponents. In 2002, he was set to captain the Republic of Ireland at the World Cup in Japan and South Korea. But he was utterly appalled by the amateurish preparations of the Football Association of Ireland, the FAI. The training pitch was a dry, bumpy, dangerous mess. The official training kit arrived late. For a player conditioned by the pristine professionalism of Manchester United, it was a profound insult. His frustration simmered under the surface until it boiled over in an explosive team meeting on the now infamous island of Saipan. He unloaded on the manager, Mick McCarthy, a man he had never respected as a player or a person. In a tirade laced with blistering profanity, he questioned McCarthy's ability, his integrity, and even his nationality. "You're a liar and a fucking wanker!" Keane screamed, the room falling silent. "I didn't rate you as a player, I don't rate you as a manager, and I don't rate you as a person. You can stick your World Cup up your arse." The fallout was seismic. Keane was sent home in disgrace. The entire nation of Ireland was split right down the middle. You were either Team Roy or Team Mick. It became a national psychodrama that dominated headlines for weeks. For Keane, it was simple. It was a matter of principle. He demanded the highest standards, and when they weren't met, his only response was total blistering confrontation. If you find this side of football as fascinating as I do, why not share this video with a friend you love to debate these moments with? His legendary career at Manchester United, the club he had defined for over a decade, would end in a similarly explosive, dramatic fashion. By 2005, his Warriors' body was beginning to fail him, but his tongue remained as sharp and as dangerous as ever. After a humbling 4-1 defeat away to Middlesbrough, Keane recorded an interview for the club's own television channel, MUTV, in which he systematically and mercilessly destroyed his own teammates. He criticized Rio Ferdinand for thinking he was a superstar just because he was paid a lot of money. He said Darren Fletcher was out of his depth. He questioned the character of almost the entire squad. The interview was so incendiary, so damaging, that the club refused to ever air it. But the damage was done. Ferguson, the manager who had protected and nurtured Keane for 12 years, saw it as a direct, unforgivable challenge to his authority. He called a team meeting where he and Keane had a furious, screaming confrontation in front of the entire squad. The bond, once unbreakable, was shattered beyond repair. A few days later, Keane's contract was terminated by mutual consent. After 12.5 years, 480 appearances, and 7 Premier League titles, his Manchester United career was over. It was a brutal, unceremonious end for arguably the club's greatest ever captain. He fulfilled a boyhood dream by signing for Celtic in Scotland, where he added a league and cup double to his collection before his battered, bruised body finally gave up on him for good. He retired in 2006, unable to meet the impossibly high standards he still set for himself every single day. In his post-playing life, Keane has remained exactly who he always was. As a manager at Sunderland and Ipswich, he was demanding and incredibly intense, achieving some initial success before his confrontational style inevitably wore thin. But it is as a television pundit that he has found a new stage for his unique brand of brutal, unfiltered honesty. With a withering stare and a few perfectly chosen cutting words, he can dismantle a player's performance or a manager's flimsy excuses. He suffers no fools, offers no empty platitudes, and speaks with the exact same raw conviction that defined him as a player. Roy Keane's legacy is without a doubt complex. He was a footballing genius, a true warrior, a leader who inspired both unwavering devotion and genuine fear in equal measure. He was also a deeply flawed man whose rage could lead him to dark, regrettable places. He was a winner of the highest possible order, but his career is also defined by the bridges he burned and the controversies he created. He was a man of unbending principle who refused to compromise even when it was to his own detriment. He was never just a footballer. He was a force of nature. The fire that burned so brightly in the Highbury tunnel that night was the very same fire that propelled a small, underestimated boy from Cork to the absolute pinnacle of the beautiful game. It was a fire that won him everything, and in the end, it cost him dearly. But without it, he wouldn't have been Roy Keane, one of the most compelling, terrifying, and utterly unforgettable characters the sport has ever and will ever know. And that's where this incredible football story concludes. What a journey, right? I'm so eager to hear your thoughts. What moment from Keane's career stands out to you the most? Do you see him as a hero, a villain, or something in between? Please share all your opinions, your favorite moments, and any questions you have in the comments below. I truly love reading them and building this amazing football community with all of you.